The night was eerily quiet, save for the soft glow of the YouTube videos illuminating the dark confines of my bedroom. As I lay in bed, absorbed in the digital world, a sudden disturbance shattered the tranquility. It began with the unmistakable sound of a lock being tampered with, emanating from the neighboring apartment. My senses sharpened, and a sense of foreboding settled upon me like a heavy shroud. I paused the video, straining to listen to the ominous developments next door. The initial fumbling at the lock was followed by an eerie silence, which was quickly shattered by the sounds of a struggle. Alarm bells rang in my head. Something was undoubtedly awry. In that moment, instinct and adrenaline propelled me into action. Without a second thought, I tiptoed out of my bed, my heart pounding in my chest. My fingers found the cold, reassuring grip of my MP9, a weapon I had kept for personal security. I knew it was time to investigate. With every step, the tension in the air thickened, and my grip on the pistol tightened. As I approached my front door, I could make out the silhouette of a man through the blinds. Fear gripped me, but it was eclipsed by the unwavering determination to protect myself and my home. Chambering around, I could feel the weight of the decision I was making. The man outside was becoming increasingly audacious, and the situation demanded my utmost vigilance. With resolve, I positioned myself in front of the door, my voice trembling as I shouted, "Get out of my house! I will defend myself." Outside, the intruder remained unfazed, his persistence undeterred. With alarming force, he punched out the screen and began to worm his way inside. Panic surged through me as the man's head, one arm, and one leg breached the threshold. Time seemed to warp, and my heart raced with each passing second. Desperation and adrenaline coursed through my veins as I frantically reached for the phone, my trembling fingers dialing 911. The dispatcher's voice offered a lifeline of hope, but the gravity of the situation loomed large. The man was making his way further into my home, and I was running out of options. I decided to make a calculated move. Setting the pistol down momentarily, I reached for my Mossberg 512 gauge, the very embodiment of home defense. I racked the slide, the distinctive sound echoing through the room, a warning to the intruder. I hoped it would be enough to make him retreat, to make him understand the peril he was in. Yet, my actions did not yield the desired outcome. The man remained undeterred, his gaze locked onto me with an unsettling intensity. Panic gnawed at the edges of my resolve as I grappled with my next move. In a moment of ill-fated judgment, I decided to pick up the pistol once more, believing it to be a more comfortable and precise option in my hands. But it was a grievous mistake. As I diverted my attention for the briefest of moments, my focus wavered, leaving me vulnerable. The intruder, undeterred by my actions, continued to stare at me with an unsettling calmness. Then, in a turn of events as inexplicable as the night itself, he simply turned and walked away. Minutes that felt like a lifetime passed, each second laden with uncertainty. My pulse still raced, my heart still pounded, but the immediate threat had vanished. The man's departure was as mysterious as his intrusion, and the sense of dread lingered like a shadow. Relief washed over me as I heard the distant wail of police sirens drawing nearer. The response time had been impressively swift, but in the midst of the ordeal, it had felt like an agonizing eternity. The arrival of the police cruisers marked the end of the immediate crisis, and I was left to recount the night's harrowing events in a series of statements. When the officers departed, leaving me to the solitude of my own thoughts, I felt a lingering unease. I couldn't shake the lingering sense of vulnerability and the chilling encounter with an intruder who had walked away without explanation. With caution and my Shield 9 in hand, I sought refuge at my girlfriend's house, needing the comfort and reassurance of her presence to soothe the lingering dread. The night had irrevocably altered my sense of security, leaving me with questions that remained unanswered and an indelible memory of a terrifying intrusion into the sanctity of my home. The year was 1998, and I was just a 22-year-old mother, my small but precious child napping peacefully in the adjoining room. The soft hum of the computer in the front room was the only sound that filled the air, a seemingly ordinary moment on a seemingly ordinary day. But then, in an instant, the veil of normalcy was ripped away, and my life plunged into a nightmarish abyss. The front door, my fortress of security, swung open with a jarring force, as though torn asunder by malevolent hands. In walked a man, Hispanic, around 5 feet 6 inches in height and weighing approximately 180 pounds. In that heart-stopping moment, my world shifted into a chilling and unknown dimension. Initially, I felt no immediate alarm, as we had recently welcomed a Hispanic family a few doors up the street. The thought that he had made a mistake, wandered into the wrong house, seemed plausible. It was a fragile lifeline to sanity that I clung to desperately. With an eerie calmness, I addressed him, calmly informing him that he had entered the wrong house. But his gaze, vacant and devoid of understanding, held no recognition of my words. Panic began to claw at the edges of my consciousness as I repeated myself, this time more forcefully. Still, there was no response, no acknowledgement. A creeping unease slithered through me, its tendrils squeezing my heart with icy fingers. I stood there, a mere wisp of a woman, 5 feet 3 inches in stature and weighing just 90 pounds at the time. The room around me offered little protection, a simple office bereft of the weapons or defenses I so desperately needed. With each passing moment, my fear intensified. I raised my voice a third time, my plea now tinged with desperation. But the intruder remained an enigma, his silence a haunting void. My biggest fear, however, was that my child, who had only recently surrendered to the embrace of sleep, would be roused by the turmoil unfolding before my eyes. For reasons unknown even to myself, I glanced at the closed door of my child's room while I yelled. In that instant, the intruder's gaze followed mine, and he took a menacing step toward the sacred sanctum of my child's dreams. A primal fury surged within me, fierce and unyielding. I knew, with unwavering certainty, that I would die before I would allow this malevolent presence to breach the sanctity of that door. Desperation gripped my soul as I frantically scanned the room for any means of defense. My eyes settled on a pair of scissors, innocuously resting in a pencil cup on the desk. My trembling fingers seized them, and a cold determination gripped me. With an urgency born of terror and maternal instinct, I thrust the scissors deep into the intruder's abdomen. The blade penetrated his flesh, and I felt the handle cut into my own hand. Blood erupted from the wound, a grotesque fountain of horror that painted the room in nightmarish hues. His eyes, wide with shock and agony, bore into mine as I jerked the scissors toward me with all the strength I could muster. Blood spattered across the room, a gruesome tapestry of violence that bore witness to the unspeakable horror of that moment. In an instant, the intruder's predatory intentions shattered, and he stumbled backward, his retreat fueled by both pain and fear. He fled through the open door, leaving behind a grisly trail of crimson evidence. The police arrived soon after, tracing the twisted path of blood for several blocks. Yet, the trail eventually vanished into the night, as if the very darkness itself had swallowed it whole. Despite their relentless efforts, there were no answers, no closure. In the wake of that horrifying ordeal, I was forced to undergo HIV tests for 2 agonizing years, our blood forever intertwined in the harrowing struggle. The fate of the intruder remained a haunting enigma, his identity and motives shrouded in darkness. For years ago, in the midst of a seemingly ordinary gathering, I found myself ensnared in a nightmarish sequence of events that would forever haunt my memories. The incident began innocuously enough, with an argument at a party, a heated exchange of words that, to my dismay, spiraled into a minor physical altercation. The antagonist in this unsettling drama was none other than an old friend, one who had recently returned to our hometown after a decade of absence. As the dust settled on our ill-fated skirmish, a fragile truce was forged between us. We set aside our differences, perhaps fueled by the nostalgic bonds of friendship that had once united us. With tensions momentarily quelled, we continued to share the evening, reveling in the company of others for another hour or so. When the time came for my old friend to bid farewell, I offered to walk him home, for our residences were merely 3 blocks apart. Little did I know that this seemingly ordinary act of camaraderie would cast a sinister shadow over the hours that lay ahead. The night settled into an eerie stillness, and I slipped into the embrace of slumber, confident that the events of the evening had been resolved. However, the tranquility was shattered with a violence that sent my heart racing. The sound of shattering glass pierced the silence, a dreadful symphony that reverberated through the chambers of my mind. A dark and malevolent force was at work, battering my garage door with an unrelenting fury that made no attempt at stealth. Panic gripped me as I recognized the ominous intent behind this relentless assault. My trembling hands reached for the phone, my voice quivering as I dialed 911, desperately explaining the nightmarish scenario that was unfolding before me. I retreated to the sanctuary of my living room, clutching a baseball bat, a feeble defense against the unknown intruder who sought to breach the sanctuary of my home. The phone, still connected to emergency services, lay on the ground beside me, a lifeline to the outside world. With grim determination, the intruder forced their way through the final barrier, a door that separated us by mere feet. Fear and adrenaline coursed through my veins as I lunged forward, wielding the baseball bat like a weapon of retribution. The room was shrouded in darkness, the frantic rhythm of my heartbeat drowning out all other sounds. A series of fierce blows rained down upon the intruder's head, each one landing with a sickening thud. I felt the bat connect solidly, a raw expression of terror and anger. One blow struck true against a vulnerable rib, eliciting a gasp of pain from the assailant before they crumpled to the ground. As the cold light of reality pierced the veil of darkness, I beheld a shocking sight. Before me lay the very woman who was intrinsically tied to the events of the previous evening, the wife of the man with whom I had clashed in that ill-fated altercation. Her contorted features bore the unmistakable signs of pain and fury, and she clutched a weapon in her hand. The police arrived swiftly, their presence a beacon of salvation in a world turned upside down. An ambulance was summoned to tend to the fallen intruder, her injuries grave and life-threatening. The hours that followed were fraught with tension, a disquieting pall that hung over the gathering like a shroud. In a chilling admission to the authorities, the wounded woman revealed her sinister intent. She had sought to launch a violent attack upon me in my sleep, a nightmarish plot that had been narrowly thwarted. Her revelation sent a shiver down the spines of all who bore witness to the unfolding drama. In a twist that defied conventional wisdom, I chose to forego pressing charges against the woman, guided by a peculiar sense of compassion. Instead, I made a solemn demand that she receive the psychological help she so desperately needed. She was destined to spend 2 long months in the intensive care unit, teetering on the precipice of life and death. The aftermath of that fateful night cast a lingering pall over the lives of all those involved. The woman's actions had left an indelible scar, a harrowing reminder of the darkness that could manifest within us all. In the wake of her recovery, she became a relentless tormentor to those in my circle, a haunting presence that refused to be exorcised. The echoes of that night, with its unsettling blend of violence and compassion, continued to resonate through the corridors of my memory, a chilling reminder that sometimes the most terrifying threats can come from the most unexpected sources. It was a day like any other, a Sunday, as my family and I made our way home from church. The familiar route led us to our house, nestled at the end of a long driveway. However, as we approached, a sense of unease began to wash over us, like a dark omen hanging in the air. Parked in front of our house was a truck we didn't recognize, a harbinger of the peculiar and unsettling events that would soon unfold. My father, the pillar of our family's strength, quickly made a decision. He turned to my brother and me, his voice weighted with caution, instructing us to remain in the car while he ventured forth to ascertain the purpose of this uninvited guest. As my father approached the truck, our eyes, still cloaked in uncertainty, locked onto the towering figure hunched over by the front door. The man was a formidable presence, easily standing at 6 feet 6 inches and possessing a rotund beer belly that dwarfed his frame. He seemed entirely out of place, a disconcerting anomaly in our tranquil world. My father, a teacher well acquainted with the faces of our small town, cautiously ventured a greeting, calling out, "Jared? Is that you?" The name hung in the air like a fragile lifeline, a desperate attempt to establish some semblance of familiarity with this perplexing intruder. Jared, however, remained utterly inscrutable. He turned, his gaze cold and devoid of recognition, refusing to acknowledge my father's presence. With a sense of unease deepening by the second, Jared swiftly retreated to the passenger side of the enigmatic truck, his actions furtive and enigmatic. Clutching his 10-gallon hat to his head with an inexplicable urgency, Jared flung himself into the vehicle headfirst, his legs still dangling out of the passenger door like a grotesque marionette. Panic etched across his features, he urgently yelled for the driver to go, as if a malevolent force pursued him relentlessly. In an instant, the mysterious truck roared to life, its tires spinning madly as it peeled out of our driveway, leaving us in stunned silence, bewildered and utterly confounded. We watched as they vanished into the distance, two enigmatic figures swallowed by the world beyond. Later examination revealed that Jared had attempted to unlock our front door with a screwdriver, an unsettling discovery that sent shivers down our spines. The door, ironically, had been unlocked the entire time.